I didn't have a bio for you. I just, pulled up your website, because you're so famous. And then I saw this like sexy guy here. And I was like, yeah, that looks just like him. That like, what is that? Like an 8 or 9 pack there? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What's going on? But let's see, you've got a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, a Master of Arts in English, and you teach fiction literature at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And, you present everywhere, enjoy cycling, martial arts, torturing young minds with otherworldly ideas, and monsters of every flavor. So you left off the part about, you're a pretty good bar buddy, too, That's how
as a writer, that's just a given.
Right. So, let's see. We got a couple of minutes. Do you want to give us some sort of warning about like this story you're going to be telling?
Well, I don't know. I haven't decided what I want to read. I mean, I've got a couple of ideas. I was going to maybe sort of leave it up to the audience. Do we have any way for them to like chime in with chat or anything?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We can see what they're putting in here, and I can highlight comments. But
okay, if it's too complicated, I'll just probably read the Hammer, because I've got a couple of books that I was thinking about. A couple that I've got. This is the Hammer Falls. Oops. Right. And I was also thinking if people were since this is a pretty dystopian time we're living in, maybe they don't want to read about dystopian gladiators. So I was also thinking my YA contemporary fantasy. So which is somewhat on the lighter side. So I am open to either.
Let's see. I'm just seeing if I can turn this so that I can. Nope. Yeah, it seems to be like they don't make it very easy to pull people right now.
Okay, that's cool. So, I'll read the Hammer.
You're gonna read the Hammer?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. I'll get my ugly mug off the screen here because
Well, give me a minute to figure out. I've got a text request for the lighter side.
Oh.
Somebody's saying, "Please God, no more dystopia."
You get all the fun ones.
Okay, well, all right. I'll take that request under advisement, and we'll switch to this one.
Okay, all right.
Which does not come with a parental guidance warning.
So, is there going to be naughty language?
This book is strictly PG-13, so maybe a little, but not a lot.
Okay, all right.
I think the book has one F-bomb. Because that's what you get in a PG-13 movie. You get one F-bomb. So
that sounds good. Are there boobs? Because usually there's boobs.
No.
Okay.
None that are uncovered.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, yeah, and that's one of the books that I didn't have in my picture. I only had, like, the... Yeah, that one. I didn't have that one. I have, like, Blood and Gasoline, and I do have the Hammer Falls. That one. Whoops. Where's my camera? There it is. And, Shivers. I think I got this from you at Malcon.
Yeah, probably. I think you got my last copy of that.
And Straight Out of Deadwood, and I was actually at the release party for that, and I guess it's now a finalist for the Colorado Book Award for anthologies.
Yeah, so and rightfully so. That's a great anthology, and not just Not because it's got me in it, because it's just got a lot of great stories. I just love that book. I loved writing weird westerns, and that story in particular. Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories that I've written in there. It's called Bloodlust and Gold Dust.
Well, yeah. Well, so I mean, it's a pretty good collection, and I still need to get to that book actually in my to be read pile, but okay. So, all right, I will let you go ahead and read, and I will wrangle some of the talent here. And be back with you in a few minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, hello everyone who's out there. I can't see you, but I hope you are there. As I said, I'm going to be reading from Junk Magic and Guitar Dreams under my young adult pen name, T. James Logan. And so this story is a contemporary fantasy, and I don't know. I just love this book. When I was going through the editing process, I got all choked up just sort of going through it again. I don't know. I think something about this book was cathartic for me in a way that I can't exactly explain. So I'm going to jump into it here. So our main character is a 15-year-old boy named Otter. His nickname is Otter, and he is a musician, just like his mother was. And he's never known his father, and his mother has just died of cancer. So he is on his own, and he's trying to do the best he can. So I'm going to start at chapter 4, because we spent the first couple of chapters introducing the mother and then him, and now she's gone. And so, all right. So this is, oh, by the way, you may, if you pick up a copy of this, you may start to recognize that all of the chapter titles are the names of songs, and the names of sections are the names of albums. So part 2 is Appetite for Destruction. Chapter 4, Sunday Morning Coming Down. 2 months after his mother's death. What am I supposed to do with all this crap? Otter whined as he looked down at the ragged cardboard box in his arms. The lawyer folded his hands on the mahogany desk. Your grandfather's will was very specific. He bequeathed you this box and its contents. Otter's eyes felt like a dusty gravel road, and last night's wreck fest with Zeke had left what tasted like a coating of dead mouse on his tongue. Nothing in the box looked remotely valuable. Trinkets, knickknacks, cheap plastic toys. He'd be lucky to get $5 at Big Jimmy's pawn. He'd spent 2 hours on a bus, missed work when he desperately needed the money, risked angering his boss over the last-minute no-show, and put his job in jeopardy for a box of useless junk. Load of horse shit, he muttered as he retook his seat next to Aunt Misty. Beside her, in this office of hardwood, leather, and entitlement, he felt like a vulture among prize fowl. He pulled the bill of his mud skipper's baseball cap lower over his eyes. The air in the lawyer's office smelled like leather, fresh carpet, and at least 3 conflicting perfumes. Aunt Misty flashed him a brittle, stone-gray look of disapproval at his language. Her face was a plastered mask of beauty a decade past its expiration date, framed by a golden blonde mane more luxuriant than the hair of girls half her age. She belonged on her new anesthesiologist husband's mantelpiece. Her handbag was worth as much as his ramshackle trailer house. Too bad she hadn't seen fit to share any of that wealth, or else Otter's mom might still be alive. Otter remembered old Uncle Sal, Misty's first gig, from the days when they had all still been a family. Sal had been a good guy. He'd have helped out Mom in Mom's last days. But living with Misty must have put too much strain on the old ticker. When Otter had first walked into this room, 10 minutes late, and Aunt Misty had turned to look at him, he was immediately angry at how much she looked like his mother. The lawyer went on, and also to each of my grandchildren, Michael McIntyre, Mia Kowalski, Mara Kowalski, and Maya Kowalski, the sum of $50,000. The utterance punched Otter straight in the heart. A kaleidoscope of possibilities exploded in his brain. Everything he could do with $50,000. A smoking hot motorcycle up to his armpits and smoking hot girlfriends, starting with Amber, that girl from the music store. The smoking hot Les Paul hanging behind glass at the guitar store. Of course, Mom would have paid bills, set up a college fund for him, maybe go to college herself, all sorts of boring stuff. But like Zeke always said, school was for losers. Best to just enjoy life as it came. He deserved some fun after what he'd been through, what he was going through. Didn't he deserve to escape his crappy life just for a little while? So he'd happily toss back a few celebratory beers and weed and pizza and video games, and to be placed in an interest-bearing trust until such time as the beneficiaries reached the age of 25. Otter's hopes and visions collapsed into heaps of ash. 25 was old. Most days, he couldn't imagine 21, much less 25. That money was a lifetime away. About 6 months older than him, his 3 cousins, the triplets, looked like M&Ms, little blonde duplicates of their mother sitting just on the other side of her, wearing different colors of candy-coated shell. The weight of the box on his legs further angered him. Otter hadn't seen his grandfather in 7 years. And with all that money, why couldn't Grandpa have given some to Mom? He could have at least paid for hospice. She wouldn't have had to die in agony. Otter wouldn't have had to watch her die by inches, wallowing in squalor every day for the last few months. Otter squirmed in his chair as the lawyer droned on like a floor buffer. He peeked into the box and spotted an old Orange Crush bottle cap. His lips tightened with disgust at being the proud new owner of a box of useless crap. He reached inside and drew out the bottle cap, turned it over in his fingers. The old glass pop bottles were still around in specialty shops, but everything else was plastic nowadays, cheapened. The bright, sunny flavor of orange soda crept into his mouth, sweet and blazing citrus. He could almost imagine playing in empty lots with his buddies, darting through wooded hidey holes not yet swallowed by pavement. The smell of orange, the smell of fresh-cut grass, of hot dogs at the ballpark, of the leather of his baseball glove, of dirt on his pants. The sounds of children playing, the laughter, the taunts, the jeers, the challenges, of the crack of a bat kissing the ball, of leaves rustling in a zephyr. The taste of an Orange Crush float, essence of orange made creamy by a scoop of vanilla ice cream at the dairy freeze. The weariness of having run hard, climbed hard, played hard as he could, until the light failed and fireflies emerged from the shadows under the trees, and he collapsed with weariness in his bed with a summer breeze wafting through the window and yearning for another orange soda pop. What the heck was a zephyr, anyway? The lawyer snapped shut his binder and yanked Otter back into the present. Thank you all for coming. Otter caught himself with a grin on his face in spite of his annoyance at the proceedings. The intensity of all those memories made him scratch his head, especially because he had never played sandlot baseball with a group of his buddies or visited a dairy freeze. And yet, it all felt so familiar. Then he snorted and chucked the bottle cap back into the box. He didn't have time for such childishness anymore. Downstairs in the high-rise's first-floor lobby, the green M&M, Mia, approached him. Hey, Mike, how are you doing? He compared this pretty girl, tall and lanky, with her long honey gold braid draped over her shoulder, to the skinny little tow-headed kid from his memories. A dozen snarky retorts hovered on his tongue, but she hadn't earned any of them personally, so he said, Surviving. Sorry to hear about your mom. That must have been really, really hard. He sniffed. Thanks. Should he accept her concern? His hesitance must have prompted her to say, We didn't know what was happening with you guys. And whose fault was that? He really didn't know. It had to be because Aunt Misty was somehow awful, and probably Grandpa too. Mom would not have cut ties so thoroughly without good reason. Adults, what are you going to do? He said. She quirked her mouth into a smile that looked genuine. She had always been the least snooty of his three cousins, that much he remembered. How's the band going? His ears warmed. Where did you hear about that? She pointed to the guitar case slung over his shoulder. Oh, well, I haven't seen them much since school got out, since his mother really got sick. But we almost have a gig lined up. Cool. Where? At the Black Line. Never heard of it. Of course she hadn't. It was a million miles from her sphere of reality, but it was also a million miles away from his. There was no such gig, only hopeful talk of such a thing, and 3 months old talk at that. They hadn't had a rehearsal since school closed in the spring, and he hadn't seen Lika since that night at the Walker's house. She'd called him a few times. He'd answered once or twice. The weight of grief still felt like a wall between him and the world. He hadn't even picked up his guitar since the last time trying to play with his mom. It was too painful. But the absence of it was doing things to him he didn't understand, making him cranky. So he had brought his mom's six-string with him today, thinking he might do a little strumming in a park or on a bus. Bitterness had settled into his thoughts, but he didn't know what he could do about it. It did feel good to have it with him, though. He was a bassist, but when you wanted to make music all by yourself, you needed a six-string. But it sounds fantastic, Mia said. It's a big rave club, all industrial Gothic. The light of interest in her eyes guttered. Mom would never let us go to that kind of place. He leaned closer. You could sneak out. You have a driver's license by now, don't you? The Black Line was a pipe dream. So why was he spinning this tall tale? To impress this relative he barely knew anymore? Mia snickered and glanced at her mom, who was watching them from across the lobby with the blue and red M&Ms. Aunt Misty tucked her four-figure purse under her arm. Let's go, Mia. I'm sure Michael has a bus to catch. We could give him a ride, Mia said. There's no room in the car, Misty said. And by car, she meant her 8-passenger Lexus SUV. Otter turned away. See you, Mia. Mia pulled the Hello Kitty notepad and pen out of her purse, scribbled her phone number on it, and handed it over. Let me know about the show. Sure. He stuffed the paper in his pocket. Families should support each other, right? He restrained the impulse to scoff. It was good to see you. Bye. She waved and hurried after her sisters, leaving him standing there with his cardboard box full of crap. He considered chucking the box into the first garbage can he found, but then maybe there was something valuable in there. He needed to do an inventory first. Chapter 5. This is a short chapter. Crazy little thing called love. The stench of diesel crept into the rear seats where he sat with the box in his lap, this last remnant of an old man's life. Otter opened a ragged flap to peruse the contents again. He propped his head on one fist and sighed. Stuff like this only mattered to the person who had it. Big Jimmy's pawn already had some of Mom's stuff Otter didn't need. Every time he handed over a curling iron or an alarm clock, though, a pang pierced his chest and his lungs constricted. But he went through with it anyway. Mom's cancer had dragged them both along their jagged edge for months before she succumbed. There was nothing left in the bank account, no savings, no cushion to fall on. His job at the car wash had slowed the tumble, but it was like a car trying to brake on an icy downhill. Something bad was going to happen at the bottom. The box felt warm against his knees as if it had something alive in it, like a puppy or a cat. His head still ached from last night, and the dead mouse had curled up behind his tongue. He couldn't keep doing that, the all-night game fests. But Zeke was the only person who seemed to understand Otter's situation. Beer and weed and an 8-hour video game marathon were the only combination that let him block it all. The pain, the memories, the confusion. And then there was Amber. For about a week after Mom died, he had wandered the streets of town aimlessly, determined to be in the sunshine. Being at home was simply too painful. Mom should be there, but she wasn't. In his wandering, he had come upon a used vinyl and CD store called The Flip Side. Thinking he might be able to bring some CDs to sell, he left his bicycle out front and shambled inside to check it out, only to find behind the counter the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She was sitting on a stool, sorting through a stack of CD cases. Raven hair with a long scarlet forelock draped over one eye, a heart-shaped face, button nose, and lips made for kissing. He didn't even know he'd been dreaming of her his whole life until he saw her right there. He stood there and stared at her, his mouth going dry, until she noticed him. She said, "Hi." The best response he could manage was some caveman-like grunt. She looked roughly 15, wearing a colorful t-shirt that read Susie and the Banshees, cut-off denim shorts, and a skater girl vibe. She otherwise ignored him, and he was forced to steal glances at her as he meandered the aisles helplessly. Eventually, he weirded himself out and left without saying a word to her. He went back a few days later, this time with a handful of CDs. They were his mom's, but none of them were by bands he cared about. "You'll have to bring these back when my uncle is here," she said. "I'm not allowed to buy used stuff." "Oh. Weren't you in here a few days ago?" Her eyes looked into him so deep he would never forget them. Deep blue, rich blue, with a pale ring around the iris, holding him fast. "Yeah, that was my first time." His ears heated, cheeks flushed. She remembered him. "We don't get a lot of customers. Nobody gets their music from CDs anymore. It's all MP3 files." "Buggy whips," he said lamely. "What?" "My mom used to tell me about how buggy whips were a huge business 100 years ago, before cars." God, he sounded stupid. She smiled. "Right, I get you. Welcome to the internet generation, old farts." Beside her on the counter was an aging stereo system, complete with dancing equalizer lights, a 10-disc CD changer, a vinyl record player, a cassette deck, and even an old reel-to-reel. "Is that what's playing the music?" Over the store speakers came a smooth, laid-back but repetitive song that went, "Sweet, Sweet Jane." "Yeah, that's the coolest part of this job. I get to listen to whatever I want," she said. "This is not bad. What kind of stuff are you listening to today?" A stack of CD cases stood beside the sound system. She scooted them toward him. "This is Cowboy Junkies, Sweet Jane. It's a Lou Reed cover, but I like it better than the original. Then we have Susie and the Banshees, Patti Smith, Joan Jett, The Pretenders, Amy Winehouse, Alanis Morissette, Fiona Apple, ZZ Ward." He nodded with appreciation. All of it music with meat on its bones, not bubblegum. Mama had had some of this in her collection. This was a girl with thoughtful musical taste. Music meant something to her. The music she chose was a conscious expression of who she was. He had returned a few days later, the longest he could make himself stay away. She had asked him, "So, do you go to Elm Creek High School?" "Theoretically," he said. The truth was, he was so caught up in keeping bills paid that he couldn't fathom the necessity of studying geometry and frog entrails. She laughed. "So, do you or don't you?" "I haven't decided if I'm going back there next month." She nodded sagely. "I've had a similar situation." When she didn't elaborate, he started feeling so awkward that all he could do was blurt, "Hey, what's your name?" "Amber." "Call me Otter." She smiled again, broader this time. One of her incisors was adorably crooked. The strength left his legs. "Okay, Otter." The bell tickled above the front door, and a skinny, hairy dude shambled in, his hair in a loose ponytail. He looked like a rock and roll musician 30 years past his prime. "Hey, Uncle Terry," she said. The man grunted non-committally, his gaze scrutinizing Otter. "Did you finish sorting that box of stuff I took in yesterday?" "Not yet." "You go do that, and I'll watch the counter." "Okay." She gave Otter a little eye roll that threw his stomach into a loop. Otter took that as his cue to depart. The few times he had gone back to the store, only Terry had been working there. In her absence, meanwhile, Otter did something he had never done before. He wrote a song for Amber. He carried it next to his brain, carefully folded and tucked inside his baseball cap. Like he would ever have the guts to give it to her. He would probably never see her again. When the new school year had started, he couldn't bring himself to go. He had more adult concerns than doing history homework, like keeping the lights turned on and food in the refrigerator. The box in his lap shifted as if something had moved inside. He flipped open the flaps again and studied the contents. He dug his hand through the stuff but found nothing that might be moving. And a strange array of scents wafted out of the box. It didn't smell like dust or mouse droppings, but he couldn't say what it did smell like. He stuck his face in and breathed deep. Spices, maybe? Someone's perfume? Food? But what kind of food? Bread? Baking? Rice? Fish? So weird. So he sat up. When he sat up again, a girl about his age, pretty, olive-skinned, backpack on her lap, was looking at him with amusement. His face flushed with the urge to talk to her, and he had just had his face neck deep in a cardboard box. She smiled at him, braces gleaming, then pushed the button for the next stop. Something inside him reached out to this other girl he would probably never see again. She had such pretty eyes. But he didn't know what to say. And then she was gone, leaving him with his box of stupid, weird junk. And that's where I'll quit.
Okay, fine, Travis. Just leave us, wanting more.
Can I do a little bit of self-promo?
Sure.
All right. This book is on sale on Amazon for 99 cents for the ebook right now. And the paperback's only $9.99. So that's as low as I can go and still pay for printing costs. So if you liked what you heard, go there right now and order you a copy. I would be much obliged. Oh, and by the way, I was very excited last week because it actually hit number 4 on the Amazon Teen Music Fiction category.
No way.
So, yeah. Yep, number 2 in hot new releases. So I was excited. That was fun. So thank you for listening, and thank you, Amy, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to see you. And so I'm going to put you back in our mysterious staging area here where we can sort of
I shall go backstage
and hear all of you, but you can't hear anything I'm saying. I have a lot of fun talking to myself back here. It's interesting. But anyway, okay. So I will go ahead and let you do your thing. And so the next person I'm going to bring out here. Actually, Tom, where'd you go? Oh, okay. All right. I can hear you. Let's see. It looks like you're arranging things over there, so. All right. I'm just pretending to be you right now. I've got your name up here and everything. So, let's see. I'm afraid of the comparison, actually. I don't know if I'm going to put you in the stream yet. Maybe I should read the bio first. I don't know. And I'll put you on. It's fine. So you get a countdown. So let's see. I met Tom at the Pikes Peak Writers Conference in 2018, and his novel Kid Buddha won second place in the Zebulon Award for Unpublished Manuscripts in the mainstream literary historical category. I didn't realize that it was
a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, yeah. And in early 2019, his story Markless Package appeared in Artful Dodge 54, 55. So is that something like issue, volume?
Yeah, it's a literary journal.
Yeah, okay, cool. And in addition to fiction, he's posted translations of Japanese short stories, poetry, and music lyrics on his website since 2010. And he's in a band. Are you still in a band?
No, not anymore.
Aww.
All my coolness went down.
The coolness just went down. That's okay, though.
Yeah, I don't have all the cool... There's a lot of cred, a lot of music cred in Travis's story. I'm going to read through all of it. There's got to be like an accompanying soundtrack for all of the albums and songs and the titles.
This is a really cool crowd, Tom. I mean, it's hard. I think it's next to impossible to be the coolest in this group. But, also, what is up with the hair?
I don't know.
I'm smoothing everything down today.
not used to having to see people, you know, so this does whatever.
Okay, it's doing its thing.
Yes.
So, so what do you have for us today?
I have a short story. Should probably be 15 minutes about.
Okay, sounds good.
This is just a story that I wrote a little while ago about going out into the big bad world.
Sounds good. It's always a good topic. Okay, well, I will let you go with your bad self and the badass hair. So have fun.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. All right, this story is called Excerpts from the Diary of Harold Pernot, Lion Splunker. Day 1. Salutations and greetings to whichever fine university student and or lion fanatic has picked up this diary. My name is Harold Pernot, and I am a research associate at the SALL, the Society for the Advancement of Lions and Lionesses. This diary will serve as a refuge for my private thoughts as I embark upon this experiment. Of course, if you've picked up this diary, you must already be well acquainted with both the experiment and the waves it has surely made in the growing fields of biology and animalogy. However, for all intents and purposes, I will recount the events that led to this momentous undertaking. This morning, I was elected by a group of colleagues and good friends at the SALL to be fed to the lion for scientific purposes. I was extremely grateful that my colleagues believed me to be the sole research associate capable of this, and further excited when told that no one else had been elected but me. I was their first and only choice. I accepted this mission, and together we prepared the logistics in the afternoon after a long lunch. My supplies, consisting of a week's worth of food, water, writing utensils, my notebook, this diary, long stem matches, and various scientific instruments were packed into a bag for me, and I was fed to the lion at 4:55 p.m. sharp, just before the end of the day. Waving goodbye to my friends and colleagues, I must admit I felt a certain excessive joy, the kind I imagine the explorers of the New World must have felt when they left port in Europe centuries ago, certain they would have returned, having lengthened the edges of the map of the world. Perhaps by the time you're reading this, I'll be known as the De Leon of lions. It's very dark in here, much darker than we had determined or hoped for on the outside. I admit that I am somewhat reserved about making observations while in the pitch-black stomach of the beast, but will forge ahead, as I know my colleagues are counting on me, and I have faith in them and myself that this will be a successful experiment. That will be all for today, as my match is running short. Day 2. Salutations and greetings, lion lovers. There's not much to report yet, but spirits are high here in the lion. I'm very curious as to the present conditions outside of the lion. Having been inside the lion for nearly 12 hours now, my colleagues on the outside are surely performing tests on the animal for reactions such as dilation of the pupils, inflammation of the paws, or an infection of the canines. These would suggest the lion is rejecting my presence. However, I can say that I am feeling most at home here. I can sense from its movements that the lion has welcomed me in, and I have become fond of the deep rhythm of the beast's breathing. As I stared into the darkness this morning, I was reminded of that famous pair of lions called the Tsavo man-eaters. They, of course, were known for preying upon humans in the night, being responsible for dozens of railroad workers' deaths in Kenya in 1898. It has been a mystery for some time the reason these lions decided to prey on human beings, but every good lion enthusiast has a theory. I, myself, don't have one yet, but I believe there's something those lions knew that contemporary historians and researchers still haven't figured out. It's there. We just have to look much harder. We have to squint, as if forced to see the event from within a pitch-black environment, just as I'm staring into the darkness of this lion. Day 3. Salutations and greetings, lion lovers. Spirits are high here in the lion on day 3. Many exciting developments have risen to the surface since I have last written, and all have been recorded in my observation notes, which are being passed out in tubes through the lion's intestines and anus. But now, for a most thrilling report, I have made a friend inside the lion. Approximately 2 hours ago, a small wood mouse was eaten whole by the lion. Feeling a sort of kinship with the little fellow, I offered him his pick of any of my food supplies to nibble on. As he chose a small bag of roasted peanuts, I've elected to name him Peanut. I described my research to Peanut, who was very receptive to the idea and, in fact, volunteered to help in any way he could, as long as I would share my rations with him. I also told him about my colleagues, who are surely monitoring our status at this moment. Peanut became particularly excited when I noted this research was sure to become synonymous with both the study of lions and entomology in general, and that our names would go down in the history books for years to come. Hopefully this new comrade will prove invaluable in gathering information and performing observations, and will also aid in infringing upon the deafening silence that seems to be omnipresent inside the lion. Day 4. Salutations and greetings, lion lovers. There's been a small snag in my ability to perform observations from within the lion. Due to the darkness inside the lion, I entered prepared with long stem matches, meant solely to provide light by which to write observations down in the notebook. However, as you may well know, any excessive internal heat from within the lion's stomach will severely agitate the creature and may possibly cause the lion, in its confusion, to take violent actions to remove said heat. Some lions have been reported to accidentally kill themselves from slamming their bodies against rocks and tree trunks. According to SALL research, it would take only 3 matches lit one after another to accomplish this. It's a most unfortunate circumstance, considering this lion is invaluable to our research. I mention this because the darkness has proved more imposing than I had predicted, leaving me tempted to spark match after match to prolong my time being able to see. But I know the importance of this work I'm doing. I know I'm being counted on, so I refrain. As of now, I have over 30 matches left, enough to finish out the experiment in good light. I keep them safely on my person at all times. Today I shared some invigorating discussion with Peanut on a variety of topics, one of which he seemed to show particular interest in, for I could not actually see him, was my explanation of the value of observation, using Schrodinger's famous cat problem as the model. Say you were given a box and were told there was a cat inside, but the box is sealed and you do not know how long the cat has been imprisoned. Until the lid of the box is opened, the cat exists in 2 states, both alive and dead, and it is not until an observation has taken place that the multiple possibilities collapse into one reality. What people don't realize is the world is full of cat boxes with unopened lids just waiting to be observed, waiting to be opened for the whole world to see them. After I explained this to Peanut, he noted the irony of the situation we were in. The minute we entered inside of our own cat, we became both the experiment and that which observes the experiment. Although I laughed this off, the realization left a certain hole inside my chest, and has been heretofore the only blow to the high spirits which we enjoy inside the lion. Day 6. I apologize for missing a day in my diary entry. I was feeling a bit faint, but still in high spirits. I decided to take a much-deserved nap instead of recording my thoughts. Unfortunately, I believe the time that Peanut and I have spent inside the lion is nearing its culmination. We depleted the last of our foodstuffs today, and after discussion with Peanut, I have decided to give the signal to my colleagues on the outside that we request extraction. Although the food is gone, we still have 15 matches in our possession, as well as my notebook, pens, and this diary. I would just like to note here in writing the invaluable contributions Peanut has made to this project, and would like to pledge my support for his name appearing next to mine in the byline of the impending publication that will be compiled from the observations we've sent out. Day 8. Again, I must apologize for neglecting these pages for longer than a day. Spirits remain high, though, and I will dutifully continue both observations on the lion and my own thoughts. This afternoon, I recited the history of the Tsavo man-eaters for Peanut. I could tell he was enthralled from beginning to end. He asked why there were only 2 man-eaters, and when I replied that I didn't know, he posited that perhaps the 2 lions had been expelled from their pride together, and it was each lion's fear that the other lion would die and leave them all alone that drove them to such extreme behavior as eating people. Partners, he called them. I humored him for some time, but eventually corrected his theory. While intriguing, Peanut hasn't studied as extensively in the animology field as I have. Lions inherently understand pack mentality. Exclusion is a common occurrence, and very often excluded lions make their way back into the pride at a later time after becoming better suited to contribute to the pride's fitness. They don't just start acting unlion-like. But Peanut appeared to refuse this explanation, although it wasn't clear. He simply asked how a lion knows it's a lion if it's not around all those lions anymore. But how ridiculous is that? Obviously, a lion knows it's a lion. Day 10. I incurred a paralyzing fright this morning as the deep, rhythmic hum of the lion's breathing ceased for a period of more than 5 minutes. In those minutes, many thoughts arose in my mind, but most of all, a chill danced through my veins in a most agonizing manner, as if I'd just been encased in a glacier. The air inside the lion became difficult to breathe, and the darkness was all of a sudden solidifying, attaching like frost crystals to my nose, cheeks, lips. My toes and fingers began tingling as if they were numb, and for this time I wasn't certain that I hadn't died inside the lion. Somewhere within me, a scream crept up my rapidly congealing throat and shattered the ice that surrounded me. Peanut squeaked back in surprise. All went silent. It wasn't until the cathartic rhythm of the lion's breathing returned that I could be coerced back into reality with Peanut's assistance. For the next 2 hours, my mind flooded with thoughts about the victims of the Tsavo man-eaters. What had they gone through? They had all perhaps felt the same feeling and the same darkness from inside the lion wrapped around them in the same icy touch. At one point for those men, there was absolutely nothing they could do. Although one may fear being eaten by a lion, that fear evaporates upon entry of said lion. But in its place, a new plague is sucked in to fill the vacuum. And this plague's a feeling of absolute helplessness. Day 16. For days now, Peanut and I have been forced to consume whatever sustenance we can from what the lion itself eats. I chew through the raw meat that comes down the stomach, while Peanut takes any grasses, nuts, or berries that may fall in as well. Spirits are still high here in the lion, as I have faith my colleagues are working tirelessly to assure the swift extraction of Peanut and myself. There must be a problem with publication rights for the research, and they need us to stay inside until it has all been resolved. However, Peanut pointed out it's also possible an animal rights group has gotten involved and is reprimanding the SALL's extraction process as unsafe for the lion. This is a foolish notion since the extraction process is entirely safe and no one should be hurt during the procedure. And it was this foolishness that first gave rise to my suspicions that Peanut's mind was not well. I'm not one to doubt my colleagues, but I simply could not ignore it, and it's a good thing I paid mine. For my suspicions were soon given proof. Earlier in the afternoon, I awoke from slumber to find Peanut gnawing through my trouser pockets to get at the box of matches. I struggled with him before throwing him off, reprimanding him for his actions. "What in God's name are you doing, man?" I yelled at him. "Get a hold of yourself." "They aren't coming, Harold," Peanut yelled back. "We need to burn them. Burn them all so this lion will die, and we can be extracted. You said it yourself, the lion can't take the heat from 3 lit matches. We need to take action." "Bite your tongue, Peanut," I shouted back at him. "They're coming. Have faith." "They're not going to open the cat box, Harold. We're as good to them alive as we are dead. They don't care about us. But they'll have no choice if the lion perishes." "You shut your damned mouth, you insignificant little rodent," I yelled back. And there was a pause, and then I heard Peanut's voice puncture the silence. "I'm your real friend, Harold." I chose not to dignify this comment with an answer. Peanut then isolated himself, scurrying to what I believed to be the other side of the stomach. He would not respond to anything else I said. He must have truly lost his mind, and it's a tragedy through and through. But the world will care about us when we emerge from the line, having conquered it and provided said world with researched observations, the likes of which have only been dreamed of by the most intelligent men of this age. Day 22. Peanut still hasn't spoken to me. I hope to God that he's still alive over there on the other side of the stomach, but my intuition tells me otherwise. I've called out to him, longing for a response, something to break the lion's monotonous breathing, but I never received as much as a shifting of feet. I failed you, Peanut. You must have been gripped by the same icy fear that had gripped me days before. I didn't warn you. I didn't take care of you. Now that you're out in the abyss, gone forever without an opportunity for goodbye. I want to take down, right here in writing, that the publication of this research will be dedicated to Peanut's memory. I have 3 matches left, 2 in the box, 1 providing the light by which I write these words. I regret that I will be unable to record any of my thoughts after the matches have gone out, but I pledge to use them solely for imperative realizations. It has occurred to me that this diary is all I have left. The food, the water, the research instruments and notes, everything is long gone. And Peanut is gone too. I'm not alone, though. I have the voices. I hear them coming to me, wafting down from the lion's throat. The voices of all those past who've been eaten by lions. All those workers eaten by the Tsavo man-eaters. Carrying all those cat boxes with lids that were never opened. These voices talk to me and they tell me about themselves, their families, their friends, the lives they led before they were swallowed by the lions, the lives they would have led had they not been eaten. As I write this, I stare at the 2 matches in the box. My lit match is almost up. I very well could get myself out of here. I could listen to Peanut, my lost friend, and allow myself to be extracted by causing this lion to kill himself, thus allowing my colleagues to extract me. I only need to light these 2 matches. But then I would not be able to record my thoughts anymore. And that scares me. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that with eternal darkness comes eternal thoughtlessness. A world only filled with questions seeping from the mouths of long-dead people who themselves had succumbed to fear. Is this how the cat inside the box feels? Is this what it is to be alive and dead? When my ability for light goes out, will there be anything left in the darkness to see? Day 27. This is my last match, and thus my last words to this diary and to the world. Spirits are high here in the line. It should be any day now that my colleagues at the SALL extract me, and I am able to retire on the royalties I will receive from this groundbreaking research. I should like to open a foundation for little wood mice that aspire to be entomologists. I would name it after Peanut, naturally. I pray this will be enough penance for wronging the young mouse and not telling him of his madness sooner. The poor creature. He had no chance. Perhaps a moment of silence is in order. I certainly have plenty to spare right now. The match runs short. The voices are talking to me again. The victims of the Tsavo man-eaters. Sometimes I'm not sure if they're coming from outside or from inside. These honest people, honest and unlucky, they're describing to me what it was like to be dragged from their tent in the dead of night, tiger's jaw clenched around their calf muscle. Those that were eaten described the pang in their chest when they realized what was happening, when the tigers had come for them. When the whole camp collectively feared arrived for that one individual. I find I'm repeating what they say out loud. I'm splicing my story in. I can hear it coming. Something I never thought I'd be able to hear. I never heard it during all my research, all my observations. It's something that shouldn't have a sound at all, but there it is, with all the freezing intensity of far-off, blood-curdling screams. The flame on the end of the matchstick going out. The end.
That's so formal, you actually put the pen in there.
We done.
All right. All right. Well, that was good. So what made you, I mean, I'm guessing this is not Tiger King inspired, right? But I mean, this is...
No, I wrote this a while ago. That is, I didn't think about that. It is not, no.
Yeah, well, there wasn't, polygamy and everything else, and
yeah, I was missing a lot of the things that story needs.
I think that this probably is a better story anyway. I mean, better for it. Tiger King's not known for class.
Tiger King's a pretty good story.
Well,
I could not write something as crazy as that.
It depends on, I mean, that's definitely like one of those things, like, life can be stranger than fiction, for sure. That's definitely one of those situations, like, much like the situation we're all in now. So I guess that's probably the reason it's popular.
Yeah, Travis was like, I won't do dystopian, and I'm reading a story about being trapped inside.
It's okay. Small settings. It's fine. Okay. So, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on and listening.
Yeah. Do you have any parting comments or anything? Like, are you, coming out with anything exciting?
No. I just, again, thank you. And I'm glad to be able to read with these other authors.
All right, awesome. Well, you probably have to come back now because that was a good story. So, for you again.
To go comb my hair.
Okay. Well, yeah. Next time, go for a different look. Why not change it up? All right. So let's see who else that we got. We got Jeff Wood coming up here. So Jeff, I am about to put you on camera. All right. So I've got your bio here. And it says, Jeff Wood likes to write in the spaces between genres. Literary, horror, sci-fi, erotica, and romance. Tonight's story is no exception. You can find more of his stories at jeffwood.com. Oh, jeffmwood.com. And at least, one thing I have to give you some credit for over Travis is that I think your story has boobs. So
yes.
It's got at least a PG-13 rating. I'm thinking that this may be more.
No, I actually cut it back. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, my daughter's listening, so I cut out a few sentences, so it'll probably be pretty tame. But we'll say PG-13 tonight, certainly.
All right. Well, I don't know about that, but we'll see. Okay. I will let you go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jeff Wood. This is a very bright light to begin with. This is a story I just finished writing called Fuck, Marry, Kill. It's kind of based on the cruel game of the same name. It's kind of got a coronavirus-y vibe to it. And it's in 3 sections. So each section corresponds to a word in the title. So without further ado, Fuck, Marry, Kill. He met her in a bar in New York City the night before the lockdown hit. Outside the bar, the downtown streets brayed with energy. Those who walked out there did so as a self-selecting crowd, willing to break curfew, risk arrest, get drunk, get laid, catch the goddamn monkey flu, and die, all in one fell, apocalyptic swoop. It was the night before the pandemic closed down an unflinching pit bull of a city with shelter-in-place orders 2 weeks old and much stricter orders set to go into effect at 6 a.m. The bars closed at 4 a.m. in Manhattan. It felt like a sign to him, to her, to everyone who took their lives in their hands to venture out into the sweet and reckless final night of freedom. Closed down the bars at 4, plenty of time to be home by 6. It seemed like fireworks filled the sky, though there were only Though there were none, the only thing that shone was the glare of streetlights and the feeble glow of the moon. Josh staked out a slot at the bar early, sucked down a beer and a couple of shots immediately, then hit the brakes a little and coasted on fumes. He noticed Zoe dancing right away, her blissful sunny face popping in and out of view behind the otherwise faceless crowd of people between them. He stared in her direction, rewarded every few seconds by the sight of her smile. He didn't mind the short waits between sights. She came and sat down next to him when she was finished dancing. "You've been watching me." "Well, yeah," he replied. "Why?" "You're pretty," he said, and saw her face crumple a little as if disappointed by such a boilerplate answer. He attempted a little more honesty. "I like your eyes. I like your smile, too. What I really like is that your smile shows up in your eyes." Sure enough, right on schedule, the smile appeared, flashing in her eyes like sunlight on water. "Look out there," he said, "where all the people are dancing." She looked. He said, "Look at their faces. People are smiling and laughing, but only on a precious few do you see their smile inside their eyes." "And I'm part of the precious few," she said. "No, not just you. There are two kinds of people, those whose eyes show in their smiles and those who don't. Their faces are dead." The statement left her momentarily speechless. He figured he might not ever get another chance. He kissed her. She returned the kiss with typically pre-apocalyptic enthusiasm. She took him by the hand, stood, and wordlessly led him from his stool to the back door of the bar and into the alley. She pressed him against a dumpster and said, "Let's try this again." But he was already fumbling with the buttons of her blouse as his lips found hers. He peeled her shirt off his shoulders and kissed his way across her jawline and down onto her neck. When he took her breasts in his hands, she collapsed against them. As they consumed each other, revelers prowled the streets, mostly young, mostly drunk, mostly in pursuit of a sexual tangle similar to the one happening against the dumpster. Josh had been wrong. Their faces were not dead. If anything, their eyes and mouths seemed afire with color and energy, painted with life, desperate for connection. He flipped her around, pressed her against the dumpster as he kissed her. She pulled back from him. "Let's get out of here," she said. "Take me home and fuck me like it's the end of the world." He did. It was. Next section. The apartment smelled like small dead animals. They'd been inside her tiny apartment on the Lower East Side for 3 months since that first night of the lockdown. A neat stack of used pizza boxes and empty Chinese food cartons towered in the corner of the room. The windows were closed as they nearly always were, so a lingering scent of decay, along with many other smells, had gathered and prospered during the last several weeks. It was their literal window to the outside world. The occasional car whooshing by, nearly always too speedily, windows invariably closed, doors certainly locked. The people in the windows, the apartment buildings across the street, watching them with dull intensity. Every great once in a while, a pedestrian walked down the sidewalk 4 floors directly below them. It was illegal to be out on the street without a pass. Whenever they saw someone, Josh and Zoe spent hours discussing why these people were out on the streets, examining their clothes, their gait, their bodies for possible clues. They shouted down questions to the figures walking below them, but never got an answer. Usually people just started walking faster. They were bored often. They fucked all the time. When they weren't fucking, they played dumb games to pass the day. "Your turn," he said. "Fuck, marry, kill. James Franco, George Strait, Margot Robbie." Or Robbie, I don't really know. She kicked at him playfully from her side of the bed. "Well, thanks for throwing me a girl this time." "Anytime. Quit stalling." "Okay. Kill James Franco. Always kill James Franco. That one's easy. Then let's see. George Strait, he's all sweet and earnest. Gotta marry him. So I guess I gotta fuck Margot Robbie." "I'd fuck her," he laughed. She kicked at him again, less playfully this time. Too late. You're fucking me. I'll tell you what, though. If she shows up at that door, you can have her. Your turn, he said. She took a deep breath. Okay. Fuck, marry, kill. Jennifer Aniston, Ariana Grande, and let's go with Elisha Dushku. Hold on, I gotta turn off my phone here. And let's go with Eliza Dushku. Ariana Grande? Yes. Who am I, a 12-year-old girl? She laughed. You think she's hot. You said so. I saw her on YouTube once. She looked hot. I don't know. I don't know enough to kill her or marry her. Better fuck her then, said Zoe. Fuck her, I will. Marry Jennifer Aniston, of course, because you'd be like required to marry Jennifer Aniston. And I guess I'll kill who's ever left. So you're going to kill Eliza Dushku because she's all that left? Hey, she probably deserves it. I don't have strong feelings either way. Gotta kill somebody. Jesus, that's kind of harsh, huh? Yes, he agreed. It's a little harsh. It was more than a little harsh, he knew. Maybe not so much with the word games about killing people, she said. The sound of someone coughing on the street below them broke the stillness of the night. They both looked instinctively to their masks on the table by the front door. The pleasant vibe they created leaked out of the room like helium leaving a birthday balloon. They both looked out of the windows instinctively, the empty streets, the people trapped in their own apartments. She uncurled from her side of the bed and wrapped herself against his side. He dropped his arms around her and held her tightly, her face to his chest. After a time, she lifted her head and looked up into his eyes. He kissed her. The kiss lasted deep into the night. When the kiss finally ended, the window had filled with darkness. The city didn't light up the streetlights anymore, so the only light that made its way back into the room from the outside was from tiny points of individual lights, the table lamps in the apartments across the street, the headlights from passing cars. Josh heard the ambulance from a long ways away. He listened as the siren came and went, blowed toward him, then away, with the vagaries of the breeze. It trended more toward than away. When the ambulance was blocks away, he raised up on one elbow, careful not to wake Zoe, sleeping beside him. He saw others on the far side of the street watching out the window along with him. Some made eye contact, most did not. The lights of the ambulance showed up before the rig itself, blues and reds ricocheting off the plate glass windows like bullets. As the light intensified, the sound did too, until the ambulance came roaring down the street. The watchers from the windows drew back as if frightened, unwilling to expose themselves to further calamity. Their faces looked dead, blank with worry. Josh wondered what was considered an emergency in these benighted times. The audience blew down the block and left his sight, alarms Dopplering abruptly lower as it passed. He listened to the sound drift away on the breeze until it was gone. He looked down to see Zoe awake, watching his face, alert. Everything okay? She asked. Marry me, he said, suddenly earnest. What? Please, will you marry me? His eyes searched his. Her eyes searched his. With limitless calm, she said, yes, of course. He said, so much is out of our hands. So much of our lives have been confined to this room, four walls and us. You give me the gift of a larger world. I look at you and I see all of it. I look at you and remember it and am given the faith that it's still there, out there somewhere. He jumped from the bed, suddenly energized. Scouring the room for something appropriate, he found the tie to an old bread bag and fashioned it into a ring and knelt before her. And of course, by now she knew his question, and of course, by now he knew his answer. And so after he asked and after she answered, they collapsed on the bed together, sticky skin pressed together, limbs intertwined, hearts bruised and weary and relentlessly alive. Last section. You won't taste it, he told her. How do you know? She asked. It's not like you can taste test it. No, He regarded her. It's what I heard, the person who told me how. After a silence passed, he said, cork, I think. She said something about it tasting like cork. They studied the two wine glasses on the coffee table in front of them. The sun shone through the front picture window and onto the coffee table, lighting the wine glasses, highlighting the slightly altered color of the wine inside. Beyond the glass of the picture window ran the East River, and beyond that, the ruins of Manhattan. Zoe began to speak, but was interrupted by a bout of violent coughing from Josh. When the coughing had subsided, she said, "Do you want some tea?" "No, it's okay. I think it's past." "Are we in a hurry?" "No, of course not." She cleared her throat and said, "Because I like it here on the couch, me and you and the wine, sun shining through the window." "We can wait," he offered. "How long? How long can we wait?" Josh did not respond, and in the vacuum, Zoe said, "Do you remember our first night? That last night in Manhattan before the lockdown dropped?" "Our first night together," he said, our first night together was the last night of the world." He took her hand. "Don't say that. It wasn't the last night of the world. We lived together for nearly 30 years after that. The world found a way to carry on for all that time." She nodded to the picture window and the world outside it framed, the leaning buildings, the downed bridges. "The world's carrying on. Look outside. Look inside. Look at us." "There are no birds out there," she said. "No cats, no dogs, no squirrels. Do you even remember squirrels?" Slowly and with some consideration, he said, "I remember." The lines of her mouth turned wistful, then curled up at the edges into a grin. "Do you remember Netflix?" He laughed. "Yeah, I remember Netflix. Wow, Netflix was fun. Punching a button and then suddenly seeing a movie. Do you remember that thing where if you weren't with somebody but wanted to watch something together, you'd call them up and pick out a movie on Netflix and hit play at exactly the same time? I did that too. You always had to count down. Remember that countdown? And together they shouted, 3, 2, 1, play." They laughed. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "It's stupid I miss something so goofy," he said, "but I do." "Me too. I miss stupid stuff, meaningless stuff. I wonder why that is." "I don't know," he said, "but you're right. You know what I miss? Interstates. Driving. Back before all the roadblocks went up and all the states all shut down their borders, you could drive all night. Remember?" "I remember." All night long. We never got to do that together, did we? A road trip. Fill up the tank for $40 and get in the car and drive the tank dry. Pull into a gas station, fill her up again, get a Red Bull and a microwave burrito, and get in the car and keep driving. I miss it. It doesn't even seem real. I miss it so much. "Me too, love," she sighed. "I miss all of it." Her sigh caught in her throat and turned into a cough. She hacked away for several minutes as he held her and gently patted her back. When she recovered, she said, "Our first night, that last night. I imagined that the sky was full of fireworks. Even now, looking back, I remember the sky being filled with fireworks. We made our own fireworks." He smiled. "Don't be corny," she said, but she shared the smile. "Do you remember your line to me that night?" "I do," he said. She nodded to him to repeat it. "I told you I could see your smile in your eyes." "You did." "I could." "And you pointed out all the other people at the bar. You said there were two kinds of people. The kind of people who show you the smile in their eyes," she began, "and the kind of people who don't," he finished. "Do you still think that?" It was a genuine question. He said, I think it's the kind of thing a 21-year-old boy says. I don't think there are two kinds of people. I think there are lots of different kinds of people. Some people show you their smile in their eyes. Some people show you their fears. I look in your eyes and I see everything. Your smile, your fears, your everything. "Kiss me," she said, and they removed their masks and he pressed his lips against hers. The kiss stretched off across the afternoon. When it ended, they left their masks off. They watched the last of the light leak in through the picture window, coloring the wine glasses that had been sitting in the front of them for hours now. You give me the gift of a larger world. I said that to you when I proposed. Do you remember that? Of course I do. It's true, he told her. I see a larger world with you, even when the world is no longer there. It was true then. It's true now. The sun disappeared over the rim of the earth. The world beyond the glass went dark. No streetlights anymore. No porch lamps. He stood and lit a single candle on the coffee table. Light and shadow played on the walls like ghosts. The flicker of the flame danced in the complex optics of their wine glasses. Cork, huh? It tastes like cork? That's what I was told. How long? She asked again. How long can we wait? He said, we can wait as long as we want. It's our life. It's our time. Let's hold off a little longer then, she told him. All right, he said. They waited together, patiently, hand in hand. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks, Amy, for inviting me. That's it.
You're welcome. And, I mean, that's definitely my kind of romance. 1 minute you're fucking against a dumpster and the next the world is ending. I mean, really, It's amazing, right?
The New York City kind of thing.
It is. Let's see. I am trying to connect with Rosanna. I feel like a medium here, But is there anything else that you want to share about anything you've got in the works, Jeff?
Not really. I've got a story in Amazing Monster Tales 4 that's coming out pretty soon, I think in August. And I've got a bunch of fiction on jeffmwood.com.
Sweet. So that's awesome. And let's see. I have a thing to read. I guess maybe what I will do. Okay, sorry, Jeff. I will get you off of here so you're not stuck here awkwardly while I talk awkwardly. But thank you for joining us with the post-apocalyptic thing. Not that the world is ending or anything. It just feels like it's ending. Right?
Well, at the time I wrote it, things were like really in kind of, I don't know, nutty pre-apocalyptic zeitgeist. So at the time I wrote it, I was feeling pretty discombobulated by the whole coronavirus thing, and I think the story reflects that. And I think the whole kind of lack of genre boundaries in the story kind of reflects that too.
Well, I mean, it's just as long as we have some time to chat here, I think it's very important to share that I finally found toilet paper yesterday, and it was just like the most amazing thing. But then, like, I was all excited, but I noticed that on the package, it was Cottonelle, and it said, if you combine this toilet paper with our fresh wipes, you get an extreme clean. And I'm thinking, well, why do you need to combine? I mean, when I use Charmin, it just does the job, and then I get to think about the adorable dancing bears and everything. But it turns out it is one-ply toilet paper. Now, why do we sell such a thing to consumers? I mean, that's wrong. I don't want to feel pee through my TP.
Well, you can feel honorable when you're buying that $1 roll that's single ply, one at a time. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah.
You're suffering for your art, you're suffering for humanity. Sticking to one roll of one ply toilet paper.
Well, at least you're in sterile, I guess. So there is that, right? Let's see. Okay. Well, so I guess, you know what? I'm going to just go ahead and go. And we'll see. Hopefully we can get Rosanna on here. I'm sure she's much cooler than what I am about to read, but we're stuck with what we have here. So, all right, Jeff, I will let you get comfy in the backstage area. I will put my own name on here. Hello. There we go. That's me. All right. So let's see. I have this thing. that, you know, like a lot of people were talking about how like, oh, maybe I should read something sort of uplifting or whatever, but you know, it's very hard to think of uplifting things. And then I, you know, grew up in California, where like the seasons were referred to as fire, flood, and earthquake. So this pandemic thing has kind of reminded me of that. And then that made me think of this quote from one of my favorite Amy Hempel stories, in the cemetery where Al Jolson is buried, which, if any of you know it, know it's an extremely depressing story, but it's a beautiful short story. But anyway, that inspired this, and it's more of a personal essay. So hopefully I don't lose too many people here. Probably will, but it's art, you know, that's what happens. So it's called Growing Up with Disasters. After a quake, the 6 o'clock news airs a film clip of first graders yelling at the broken playground per their teacher's instructions. "Bad Earth," they shout, because anger is stronger than fear. And again, that's Amy Hempel from In the Cemetery Where Al Jolson is Buried. My parents retired right before I graduated from high school, and within about 2 weeks we moved to a house in Grand Junction. My father had already been living there for 6 months. He said he was tired of the California seasons, fire, flood, and earthquake. For people who grew up outside of California, the certainty that the earth under your feet is stable is a generally accepted truth. But for me, being thrown out of bed in the early hours of the morning and stumbling toward the doorway, my feet sinking as the ground writhed beneath me, was the norm. News channels inevitably posted footage of elevated sections of highway slithering like snakes and sometimes snapping. I later learned that the assumption that what I walked on would bend and not break was known as a form of structural integrity. Science teachers tried to explain why nobody could predict earthquakes. One physics teacher compared it to a stretched rubber band. He claimed that in the fault lines, tension built up over time and eventually something gave. And when that happened, we experienced that shift as an earthquake. Since none of the men who lived out of tents on fault lines for years after studying rocks in college could figure out a formula for predicting earthquakes, it was an accepted unknown. This was just a catastrophic event that happened sometimes and killed people. After the North earthquake, networks featured footage of toppled CD towers and a confetti mix of smashed discs and broken window glass over hardwood floors. A man cried over broken picture frames. They showed an apartment split in half, but didn't include any interviews from that site. I missed a lot of the updates about calls for blood and tissue. I kept getting in trouble. The day of the quake, my parents declared that we were getting in the car and driving to the Good Earth to eat breakfast as soon as the sun came up. My mom claimed we wouldn't notice the aftershocks as much in the car. I wasn't sure how that applied to the restaurant, which, like the house, was a building, but it wasn't a time to ask questions. At the restaurant, I kept looking around at all the hanging plants, large windows, and various decorative objects that could fall on me. I thought of what teachers had told me about windows just ballooning out during earthquakes, shattering and blinding people or cutting them to pieces. This was back when teachers could still use red ink on papers, so maybe nobody cared as much about trauma then. So we had teachers who claimed ceiling tiles would crumble like cookies, and teachers who said the windows and landscaping were waiting to kill us. I guess the idea was wherever you were, if something happened, you were in the wrong place. After I went to college, I woke up to my mom leaving a weird message on my answering machine on September 11th, 2001, telling me not to go anywhere. I was in Santa Barbara and didn't even have basic service for my TV. So I logged on to my extremely slow dial-up connection from my apartment and watched the footage of jets flying into the Twin Towers. About 7 months before that happened, a boy named David Atias had driven his car into a crowd of people in my college town and killed 4 people. I also had my own direct experience of surviving a violent crime. By my early 30s, I was living in my first house in New Jersey, and it was an adorable house with a white picket fence. It also happened to be in the town hit hardest by Hurricane Irene. My house was fine, but for a few months I felt like I lived on an island because of literal flooding all around me. Downed trees and live wires just jumping around on the sidewalks. A year later, Hurricane Sandy hit. That wasn't quite as bad for my part of New Jersey, but the shore took a hit, and a certain person who is now at our country's home failed to take responsibility for a lot of investments he had in that area, and Atlantic City took a nosedive economically and never really came back. In a weird twist of justice, Ashbury Park, a very hip and very gay neighborhood, came into its own during that time, and as far as I know, they're still fabulous. It's hard to write this and not get the sense that I'm just chronicling every bad thing that has happened to me or a major list of traumas we have experienced as a country. Honestly, though, we all know that I'm leaving some major ones out. Hurricane Katrina hit when I was still in graduate school, and the main thing that stands out for me is sitting in a booth at Moe's Southwest Grill trying to eat a crunchy taco while I watched the subtitles flash across the screen about the levees that broke. The reporter said she saw bodies floating by. Now that I work with trauma survivors professionally, the question arises almost daily: why do bad things happen? A minister pointed out to me that most people misquote it as "why do bad things happen to good people?" but the book title is, or was supposed to be, "Why do bad things happen?" We want a responsible party. We want it to end. We want revenge. We want some assurance that it will never happen again, or at least that all this pain and suffering means something. Something life-affirming needs to come out of this death, decay, and disease. Currently, we're fighting against something that isn't even alive. Viruses are particles. They only survive and replicate if they can enter a living cell, and the novel coronavirus is even smaller than microscopic. Our streets are empty, offices are abandoned, and people are hiding in their homes afraid of what this invisible particle can do to us, or can do to the people we care about. We don't even know who has it or what effects it might have because it all varies from person to person. It sounds like another epidemic we weathered in the 80s that the government didn't want to talk about. When my uncle died of AIDS in 1993, it became pretty clear that the government's acknowledgement of a problem or denial of it doesn't change whether or not the disease kills people. Currently, we're dealing with panic. We're dealing with TP pirates. We're dealing with press conferences that are closer to a remake of The Gong Show than anything else. Some people haven't seen their parents in person for months because they don't want to put them at risk. Others are tanning with strangers on Muscle Beach. A lot of those people are going to get sick and some of them will die. I agree we should do our part. Social distancing is the only preventative measure we can take. That and hand washing. Once someone is infected, it's up to God, luck, or whatever you believe in. What I hope for, if I get this, is that someone is as kind to me as I practice being with my clients. Even if someone can't hold my hand, if they can just stand there and say, "I'm right here, can you feel me with you?" So that is my extremely optimistic piece for tonight. Let me see if we have Travis.
Oh, I am muted.
Don't leave me. I unmuted you.
Okay.
So now you're not muted anymore. So let's see. What should we talk about?
Well, we've Tom asked earlier if I had a soundtrack for my Junk Magic and Guitar Dreams book.
Yeah.
And I have just put one together. So
add Jeff to this too, because you know we're all here right now, so we can group.
So I've got I've got like a Spotify link that I can share, so anybody can just go click on that and look at it.
So you have a Spotify thing now?
Yes.
Ooh.
That's how smart I am. I figured all this out in between readers.
You're so cool. You're so cool and tech savvy.
There it is.
Yeah, I can get it on here. Oh, that is not. I'm glad someone thinks this is so cool, but sorry. Okay. So, yes. All right. So we have the Spotify. Hi, Jeff. You're back. Yes, Rosanna. You can just read. We can hear you.
All right. It's hard for me to know exactly. So I'm just going to read, and then you can talk to me then when I'm done. Okay.
Yeah.
So my little set, I've been doing spoken word forever. I love words. So I really do play around with words a lot, and I have a little variety tonight of poetry, flash fiction, and memoir. So here we go. Crisis. Understand. The choice is not to be trapped in a box, no way to crawl out. We discover the lid can be lifted, blown off, torn apart, meeting more we never knew. Into forever. The black sky had that soft spring storm power, the sort of power that says, this is what you need right now. Trust. Change is on its way. Change is what you love. The woman laid on the maroon velvet love seat, staring into an energy of nothing. Sweet tears developed from a most tender spot, where emotion becomes saline, like seawater, connected to the next ocean wave that is rolling itself out into forever. Leafy greens. I was standing at the refrigerator one mid-afternoon, peering into its cool abyss, looking for something good to eat, something to relieve my self-employed and doing necessary desk work boredom. As a petite young woman who taught yoga and dance for a living, I was figure conscious, no potato chips for me. Instead, I moved the jars of pickles and mustard around and found nothing. But when I opened the veggie bin, there was a treat, a bag of baby spinach. I tore it open quickly and stood there munching one small handful after another. Munch, munch, munch. I know it's hard to believe for some, but the green stuff hit the spot. So fresh, so tender, so satisfying. Just then my fiancé came in from running errands. As he stood at the kitchen sink, filling a tall glass with filtered water, he laughed at me. I have never seen anyone eat spinach like that, Doug declared in a teasing tone. Spinach! You're like a little goat. I laughed with Doug as I returned the bag of spinach to its bin, closed the fridge, and swung around for a hug. I just love leafy greens, I said, while thinking about how much I do love them. Romaine, arugula, bib, butter lettuce, Swiss chard, spinach. But why? Asked Doug with genuine curiosity. I've always loved vegetables, I replied. There wasn't a vegetable I wouldn't eat when I was a kid. Doug was now watering the assorted collection of green plants that graced the butcher block table near the window. I watched the sun stream across bright green philodendron and ivy. Doug touched the healthy leaves as he poured water into the soil. A small but involved memory began surfacing in my mind. It had something to do with those leaves. There I was in the backyard of our two-story, nothing special house in Hammond, Indiana. My brothers and I had just finished a game of baseball, sort of. We liked to use a little rubber ball that we could hit with a hand as if it were the end of a stiff baseball bat. Our bases were made up of modest stacks of stick and stone, and there wasn't much distance between them. Still, we sweated our 7 and 8-year-old butts off hitting that ball and running those bases. A girl could work up an appetite playing with the boys like that. My brothers had run off like they had something better to do, in search of a popsicle maybe, paper route money, good for spontaneous treats and all. Meanwhile, I was satisfied with the fun of having been allowed to be one of the boys, at least for a while. I'd hit a few runs and felt happy. Took a relaxed breath and looked up from where I stood beneath the little backyard tree, the one that stood over third base. I tried to imagine myself up in that tree house my brother had built. Really, it was just a few planks of wood nestled into a crook of branches, but it challenged me to join it. I stood there and wondered if I might find a way to climb up there. And that's when it happened. I saw green. I saw leaves. I grabbed a handful and just started munching. I was eating the leaves of our backyard tree, and they tasted great. Doug's waving his hand in front of my face to get my attention. "Hey, where are you?" he teases. "What are you thinking?" "The leaves," I exclaimed. "I was eating the leaves. Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that. It was such a long time ago, and I never told anyone." "You were eating what leaves?" Doug just stood there looking baffled. I explained. "When I was a kid, we had this not-so-big tree in the backyard. It wasn't even as tall as our house, and I just started eating its leaves one day. They were really good, so I ate them again at other times. Never really thought about it. It just seemed like a thing to do." My voice was trailing off as I considered the meaning of this strange thing about me. "You were like a little giraffe then, weren't you?" Doug was hugging me and tickling me now. He had always thought my tendency to graze was cute. I mean, I'd eat big raw carrots, munch on granola out of the box, stand eating spinach at the fridge, and now he could just see an 8-year-old version of me eating leaves out of a tree. "I must have needed them," I was saying slowly now, thinking out loud. "We used to eat that pointless iceberg lettuce, the only lettuce you could get in the Midwest, and we ate a lot of canned veggies, Jolly Green Giant. Steamed cauliflower was big, but I cannot recall the fresh greens on the table. I must have been craving something there." Doug was now holding me arm's length away, looking carefully at me, allowing his continuing curiosity to take shape in another question. "What kind of tree was it?" "What kind of tree was it?" he asked more slowly. But I couldn't say. Doug was becoming excited. "We must know what kind of tree it was. Describe the leaves." Well, let me think," I said to Doug as my brain kept digging back. I could remember the size, about 1.5 inches long, inch wide. I could remember the texture, a little rough but also velvety, like felt. Mostly I could remember the taste. Not bitter, not sweet, just fresh and green. I described the leaves to Doug, adding that they were definitely tender. "Chinese elm," exclaimed Doug after thinking for a moment. "You were probably eating Chinese elm." Doug had always had a green thumb, and before I knew it, he had run off to find a botany book from his good-sized collection. When he returned, he showed me the tree and the picture of its leaves, and sure enough, that was it. We laughed all afternoon. We marveled at my good fortune that the leaves were not poisonous. I amazed myself to remember that the leaf eating had become quite a little habit for a while. And I experienced simple gratitude for the bags of pre-washed, ready-to-eat baby spinach leaves available today, because not only do they satisfy a munchy craving for nutrition, they satisfy a craving to connect with something weird of my past. And most of all, they're just plain good leafy greens. Crumbs. Tonight, Crystal broke a cracker on the floor. And as she tried to pick up the pieces, it kept breaking and breaking and breaking, till all that was left was one chance for retrieving a handful of crumbs. She wanted to cry, but that seemed so pathetic. Instead, Crystal held the crumbs, and she tried to name them. Fido, Rudolph, Rocky, James Bond. You know, names like that. Names that can fight for themselves. And so this is my little splash bevy of little things, and my leafy greens piece I wanted to share tonight because it's just light, you know, and as writers we do tend to have a lot of pretty intense things that we write, and I've had a lot of stuff that I've been coming up with as a response to the gentrification in our town that's been going on for some time now, and the displacement that we're seeing with people already. Before this pandemic, we were at a pretty heightened spot for that, and now it's just really, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of worried for some of my I'm very worried for some of my fellow human beings. I founded Denver Artists for Rent Control some years back, 4 years ago, and have been shaking some ground on the activist path already to try to influence and have been having some impact on influencing some change for housing justice. And so I'm just really wanting to be a little more light tonight. And I have one more thing to share with you that is paying tribute to just go outside and howl at 8 p.m., which my poetic comrade and buddy in all kinds of shenanigans, Bryce Morrow, has started that with his partner, Chelsea. And they came up with that idea a few weeks ago, and it just really ran like a pack of wolves, and it's just been a great thing for people. So anyway, I'm going to end with this. It's not a very long piece, another poem. It's called What is the Sound of One Howl Howling? To hear the close distance, your howl when unable to find one cold sliver of moon. I opened warm window, this frozen stuck body of me, shifting over to what it must be in a house made of worry and flammable things. And survival is one hungry beast, lighting fires fast as bear claws unleashed in this box of a house, any house, to find food, any food, feed that soul-hungry beast, eating sliver of moon, cooling fire on face of a moment of hard-assed, especially sweet stuff, any life. I listen for line to connection, hear hot pulse of warm blood, surprisingly bright, bursting through like great wolf shedding cloak of sheep's clothing. Is this yawping call I can't see, coming back like a boomerang self to wild safety, close distance, raw sound of one howl, howling now. And so I can say once more, understand the choice is not to be trapped in a box, no way to crawl out. We discover the lid can be lifted, blown off, torn apart, needing more we never knew. Thank you.
You can't get a full crowd round of applause, Rosanna, but that's pretty good.
Thank you. You know, I'm a live performer. It's always been my thing. I'm a spoken word performance artist of many years. I'm on stages and all different venues and rooms with people. And so this was different. And of course, it kind of turned my crank a little bit trying to deal with my technology over here like this on and off. I mean, I rebooted my Dell laptop twice, and I've been doing Zooms throughout this pandemic. I've been doing Zooms with town halls and all kinds of things, and that's been going well. So I don't know exactly what the problem is here, but I'm glad that I was able to deliver the words that I had selected for whoever was listening tonight. And I hope that was kind of a refreshing little closing out of the evening. I'm sorry I wasn't able to hear more of the fellow writers tonight because I was over here trying to deal with technological issues before I realized I should just pull out the Mac. And probably should have started with that in the first place. But I don't know why it's not letting you see the photo. I can see it. So I don't know. In the green room. I'm in the green room.
In the green room, yeah.
I like the green room. There's no vodka in here at the moment, though.
I know. I wish that I could provide everybody with vodka. Who else have we got here? We've got, so Travis is still here. Jeff is still here somewhere. Oh. Let's see. Oh. Let's see. I can hide myself. Well, no, I won't need to do that. Here, we'll swap out. So, right. So let's see. You guys are still up here. I can see all of you, at least, and maybe we can swap in Rosanna. I have limits on technology. And if I'm off the screen, you guys apparently can't hear me. So, which kind of sucks. But yeah, anyway, like, yeah, kind of anything you want to share about, you know, trying to write or read or, you know, do anything during these times?
It's hard. I mean, because I mean, I write a lot of speculative stuff, so I mean, I've got the like we talked, you know, The Hammer Falls is very much a dystopian novel, right? And we're like, we got enough dystopia, please no. I don't know. It feels a lot of days it feels trite to write about elves and dragons when the world is burning down. But kind of got to do it anyway, because that's what being a writer is. So one of the things that's been helping, I think, me anyway, is just sort of to treat it more like play, like escapism for myself, which is honestly something I've gotten out of the habit of doing. So I'm kind of having more fun with it lately, I guess. If for no other reason than I don't want to think about everything going on outside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, like, writing is, you know, I think a traditional escape for a lot of us. I mean, I was the nerdy kid in my school, so writing and reading were like, you know, my way out. So, you know, bullies, pandemic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really great thing right now, being able, trying to use it to process everything that's going on. And I agree with you, Travis, about it's more useful in that degree right now. Both reading certain things, but also just trying to write to find out what I think about it.
Yeah, I'm going to write a sort of a werewolf plague apocalypse novel. It's the end of a trilogy later this year. Yeah. So welcome to the werewolf apocalypse, right?
Okay.
And you can pretty much bet that we're living through crap that is going to go in that book. So
I'm speaking for Rosanna, but she seemed to think that idea was badass. She was like, yeah.
I think doing this sort of thing during this is really great. Getting it, still being able to get everybody together. Amy, thank you for like organizing it and putting it up. I think it's awesome that because we're writers, we're still going to do this. We're still going to be writing, and we're still going to want to share our stories.
Yeah, well, I think that, storytelling's so therapeutic, and well, I mean, I feel like it's therapeutic for everybody. But Rosanna, you were also saying something about
what I was going to say is I've been my really hard-hitting writing that has been being published recently is all sort of dark and heavy from, when I really took off with the flash fiction again after letting it go for years, was when we were looking at this whole, everything shifted so drastically, this whole going into this last presidential election, and then the whole resistance movement and the need to save our ground and hold our ground, and there's a huge housing crisis nationwide, global, really. I mean, I could talk about that all night. I won't though, but it's just it's been hard for me as a writer right now. I just wanted to pull some light stuff out tonight, but I am really writing a lot of heavy stuff based on just what's going on in our world, but always trying to come up with creative ways of, resolving things somehow in there. Right now I'm frustrated as a writer because I'm on full burner with the activism right now, since we are in an amazing, it's hard to even put it into words what's going on for people with losing ground on. I mean, we were already struggling to make rent as an artistic community in, Denver and Colorado and other places across the nation. I mean, the artists got adjusted when the housing crisis went crazy a few years back, and we've been making rent, but it's been really, really hard to do, and now we got hit with this. And so now people are really going to get into some dire straits because our governor's not really, he's not really taking care of us on that with executive order that he could if he wanted to, because it's a state of emergency. But hopefully we're putting enough pressure that eventually something will happen. But meanwhile, I've just been paddling fast, I guess is what I want to say. And so little poetic phrases come out in spurts. And I don't know, what about you guys? What about writer's block at a time like this? I mean, do you just get tied up feeling like, where am I? Or do you just say, well, I'm just going to go and dump it out and write about it, and then maybe I'll see where I am. I haven't had writer's block in a long time, but I do have that going on right now. I think maybe because I've had to redirect my attention so emphatically.
I haven't been calling it writer's block. I've been calling it despair, just sort of a general despair. It sort of just, I don't know, takes over some days. But I do manage and I do have like several projects just sort of in various stages of going on. So if I find myself stuck on one, I'll switch to the other. I'll switch to a different one, and and I'll make progress there. So just trying to keep moving, trying to be creative, trying to just keep working on stuff.
Yeah.
It's so weird to have a chance for, a lot. I mean, here we are with a lot of time on our hands in our homes, where our writing studios usually are. And to me, it's been odd to have this like restless kind of pacing panther kind of feeling going on inside of me. I think I'm going to have to maybe write through that in order to get to where I can just sit down and get more serious on the writing thing, I mean, I wrote this poem, The Sound of One Howl Howling, just within the last few days, and I'm happy with it. I had to just really, I had to tie myself to the chair to do that, just for like a lot of hours to just get this poem to come into a shape I could share it with y'all tonight, you know. And I'm just been surprised because usually I just love words so much. It's pretty easy for me. I don't really suffer from writer's block necessarily, or whatever you want to call it, feeling stuck. But I've been feeling, I don't know. I just haven't felt this way. I don't think I've ever felt the way I've been feeling lately, and I guess everyone can relate to that. So maybe that's something to write about, you know, probably.
I've been kind of finding that writing is just a way to connect my days together. I was actually
Nice.
writing apocalyptic tale like back in December, and I'm not writing well, but I'm writing like 500 words a day, and just being able to go day to day to day to day to connect my days together really helps me make sense of what's going on. So it's been really helpful for me.
It's a way to sort of like mesmerize yourself into being able to keep going, right? Connecting them.
Exactly. I connect the dots.
I'm just curious to hear from you all, like how your writing habits tend to be anyway. Like, are you someone that does tend to really, really spend a lot of time writing, or does it kind of go in fits and starts, which is more like the way it is for me? I mean, I write things every day, but I don't sit down and do concentrated writing sessions every day. But it sounds like if I did do that, that might be a really great way to tie these days together right now. The discipline, I guess, is what I'm asking about, like where that is for you, that you can. Do you write all day?
I have another job, so I write every day, but I'm kind of a plotter. I can't write much more than 500 words a day. On a good day, I'll hit 1,000, but I try to do it every day, and that's kind of that's to me is the key more than the word count.
What's your time of the day when you do it? Does it tend to be the same time of the day each day, or do you like let that change up as long as you fit it in somewhere?
What you guys? I do it after work and before I make supper for my kids, so it's kind of and sometimes I'll throw some stuff there at the end of the evening, but it's pretty much that little bit right there.
Oh.
I usually do it right. I wake up and use the early morning hours to try and to do it every day, and then if I do that, I can feel okay in the rest of the day, no matter what happens at like work or whatever. I did that thing for myself at the beginning. So
that's yeah. Thank you for the reminder, because whenever I get in the Flash Nano Challenge, which is the 30-day challenge that happens once a year to write a flash fiction piece every single day for a month, that's what I do. I fall asleep at night with. I'm usually one day behind, so I fall asleep with the cue from the previous day in my mind, the cue that was given. I fall asleep with that. Then when I wake up in the morning, there's something right there, and I just go with it, and then don't stop until there's been a piece that came, which I love flash fiction for that, because, short. You can accomplish the goal pretty quickly with flash fiction, but yeah, so thank you for the reminder on that, because that is I think at this time in my life, actually, that's when the best writing happens for me, is when I first wake up in the morning. And because of survival needs and the way my work schedule has gone and stuff, I haven't been doing that lately. So that's a good idea. Get that going back again. And I like Stephen King shared something that I always thought was cool that has worked for me, is when you're finishing the writing session for the day you're on, leave it just a little bit undone, like you stop in the middle of a paragraph, or leave it right when the next sentence is about to come. And then when you get up the next day, you start there, because it's all ready to keep rolling, And I like that idea. That works too.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I wish I could see you all. I'm over here with 3 blue squares, and my camera on this Mac is pretty good. I mean, there's a very
Oh.
block Rosanna, so it's like, it's kind of funny, like, you know, it's like the same experience for us.
Oh no.
Amy, you're gone.
Each other either.
It can only be one of them. It's a Highlander situation.
Yeah.
So funny. Well, you know, it's one thing. We're all figuring out how to use the technology differently. So I don't feel too bad that it didn't work out as well as I hoped it would tonight on my end, because I've been watching some pretty major snafus on the network news, even when it comes to the stuff.
Really?
Yeah, there's been some cool waiting for the person to show up stuff going on, you know.
Well, I just bumped Jeff off because he wasn't saying much, but it's like, you know, it's, yeah, there can only be 4 of us on the screen at a time, and so it's like one of those things where, and we can't hear or see each other if we're not on the screen, so it's kind of weird that way.
You know, I've been doing a lot of Zoom stuff, and that's different. With the Zoom stuff, you can see everybody, you know, and it's pretty cool. People can take their picture out or add it back in if they want to. They can keep playing around with it, and the chat comes down the side. But I don't know. This is more sophisticated. This app that you're using for this tonight. So. It sounds good, you know. It sounds really good. You all sounded really good. Parts of your reading that I was able to tune in for when I wasn't stressing out because my screen was freezing up on my laptop, my Dell. I think it might be. I think my Dell might just be dirty right now. I probably need to clean it. You know, do a major.
Have a dirty laptop.
Yeah, you know, you got to run the cleaner through it and make sure there's no bullshit inside there. Crazy. Yeah. Maybe there's a virus in it. Maybe my Dell laptop has some kind of a funky virus right now.
Technology cooties are the worst. Well, I should probably try to wrap things up, because I promised everybody it's a school night and everything. You know, we'd be wrapping up at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. But I'm really glad everybody was able to tune in, and I'm glad that you all were able to come out and share such great stories.
Thank you for having us, Amy. This was really awesome for you to put it together.
Yes,
thank you so much.
And everybody was personally invited by me, so, you know, I mean, if anyone loved or hated it, it was my fault, so you're welcome. Let's see. Yeah, so technological difficulties, but I'll let Jeff in here and see if he wants.
Nothing to add. It was nice meeting you all. And very nice conversing with you afterwards. And thank you, Amy, for inviting us. This is a very cool thing. I hope there's more of these, because it's a really way to get together when we can't get together.
Yep.
I agree. Nice to meet you too, Jeff.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and take over. I mean, I know there are much more. So I am getting older next month, and I'm kind of in denial about that. So I'll be celebrating my 29th birthday again. And it's been a good birthday all these years. So on May 20th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, we'll be doing this again. We're going to have a really good lineup. Rebecca Hodgkins is going to come back. She's my girl. She's my favorite fellow short person. And, you know, we've got some other really cool people as well. So definitely, I hope you can tune in for that. And thank you, everybody who showed up tonight. And you know, whoever, it just shows up as Facebook user over here, but whoever, you know, gave us the howl here, you know, you're awesome. We love you. So, yes, keep it coming. We love that stuff. So anyway, have a good night, everybody. Stay well, and we'll be talking to you soon.